Michael Poindexter operates under one simple principle: do it well, do it big, do it with confidence. He teaches these principles everywhere he goes, to everyone he touches, and it's his excellence that has made the excellence of others possible. Say hello to Michael Poindexter. Michael,
This interview is actually kind of special for me. The gentleman you're looking at, Mr. Michael Poindexter, made it possible for me and many, many, many others at the University of Colorado to successfully navigate that university. So before I say anything, I first want to say thank you for everything you did for us, Michael. We really do appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me, and I am embracing this opportunity to share some of my insight on what happened during that time period.
But let's talk about a little bit, before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about you, the person. Tell me about Michael Poindexter. Tell me about where you come from, the people who made you you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I have to give thanks to my parents for instilling in me the need and the want to succeed. They were very, very special and beneficial in making sure that education was a major part of our lives. And for some reason, that whole process embedded in me to find mentors all along the way that have been helpful in me getting to where I am today. I think they started it, which helped me and guided me through elementary school, through middle school, and through high school, where I basically was president of everything in high school. I went on to go to college at an all-white Jesuit institution and did the same thing at that institution too, which continued to help me grow and know the profession that I wanted to be in once I got to college. And I worked with the deans and the vice presidents there at that institution. And I was able to finally graduate in 4 years from there, again, with all of these mentors helping me along the way, and went to grad school in Iowa. Undergrad was Creighton University, graduate school was Iowa and University of Northern Iowa. And I did very, very similar things there at that institution, while graduating with a master's degree and working on a PhD while I was there, which led me to my first job, real job, which was at Iowa State. I actually had kind of left Nebraska and Iowa thinking I would get something in a more integrated type of place. But
Yeah, how'd that work out?
it didn't work out because time I got back to St. Louis, where I'm originally from, the Iowa State called and said, "We got this job for you," and I had to
Now,
pack up and go back to Iowa.
now, tell me about growing up in St. Louis, man. I mean, what was that like? And you're not that far much older than we are, so you saw some things that we saw, and you saw
Yeah.
them as a more mature person. So, how did those things impact you?
Um, well, it was a harsh impact for me because at a very, very young age, I realized that St. Louis held nothing for me. I knew that I wanted to get out of St. Louis as quickly as I possibly could. And with that in mind, at a very, very young age, because I saw how my father interacted with whites and how my mother interacted with whites, and it was a different way than we interacted with other Black family members or the church or any place that we saw. And I wanted something totally different. I also wanted what they wanted. You know, I saw
Mhm.
what they had, so I wanted that too. And for some reason, I figured that I couldn't get that in St. Louis. So immediately after high school, well, first of all, I had applied to over 30 colleges because I was getting out of there no matter what, and got accepted to all of those institutions. But there was one institution that my counselor said, "This is the place for you," which was Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska, with about 4,000 students, and it was a Jesuit institution. And I flourished there. I did, and was able to graduate in 4 years. And someone came to the college. When you're at those real rich colleges, things just come to you. Someone just arrived at the college and said, "Who wants to go to grad school?" I raised my hand, and off I went.
Mm.
you know. And it was again another exciting place that I made exciting, and we had a good time enough for me to be able to graduate and work on a PhD.
Mhm.
And then, like I said, went off to St. Louis, back home, where my
Mhm.
mother wanted me to live in the basement with the family above me, and that was a no for me. And Iowa State came and offered a job, and off I went back to Iowa State, where I was there for a couple of years as the assistant director of career development, and also working in the dean of students office. And though, and again, mentors all along the way, had wonderful
Mhm.
mentors. And finally, you know, after spending some time there, I was offered a job at the University of Texas at Austin in the
Mhm.
dean of students office. And being there a couple of years, I did not like the South. And all along comes University of Colorado, and they offered me a job in the ELP program.
So you coming to Boulder, of all places, that's a far cry from St. Louis
Right,
and Iowa and
right,
Texas.
right.
Um, what was it like the first? Let's talk about your first day. What was it like the day you got there, the day you arrived? Was it what you expected, or did you have expectations?
Well, the day I arrived, I couldn't breathe. I had to
Oh
get
yeah, a
I had
mile
to get
above.
I had to get used to the altitude. I couldn't breathe. The day I arrived, besides not being able to breathe, I saw the beauty of the place. I also thought it was a beautiful campus too. And then me meeting the students and meeting the director of the program, uh, you know, he was amazing, Dan
Yep,
Raybon.
Dan
He was
Raybon.
he was amazing, and he helped me fit in real easily. And then I started to meet the students, and you guys were just fantastic, man. I felt like you guys were family. Well, I made you my family. I made my office a place that people could come and just hang out and to be themselves in my office. And that's what happened a lot. Students just arrived and were there and just kept coming and coming, and I was loving every minute of it. 9 to 5 didn't mean anything to me. It was whenever I finished with you guys, that's when I went home. And then sometimes when I went home, there were things that I did with you guys after work, that was always fun. So my impression was what a wonderful place to work in, what a
Mhm.
wonderful home that we had found. And one of the things that I immediately began to do was to expand my knowledge of the University of Colorado to make sure
Mhm.
that I had knew everything that was going on and that I could provide a lot of openings for you guys in a lot of different places. So it worked for me. Um, and it seemed like we asked for things and we got it for you guys.
Mhm.
There wasn't anything that we were not wanting to do to help you guys be successful.
And it was totally appreciated. Were there any surprises there? I mean, or because it seems like when we saw you and Dan and then the folks in that office, things seemed to run like a well-oiled machine. But were there any things that caught y'all off guard or surprised you? Said, we didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I could. One thing I didn't see coming, well, I had a good relationship with the other EOP programs. It was kind of disheartening to see how some of the Mexican Latino professionals um, um, kind of made work dysfunctional. You know,
Mhm.
there was always a fight with what we were doing versus what they were doing, and but we found a way to work together though. But that was a little bit of a problem. I think with the institution, um, there were some things that we could have done better with the institution, but I don't remember the institution saying no to us.
Mhm.
I mean, we were able to hire enough African Americans in the EOPS program. I think we were able to get the funding that we needed to make sure you guys had what you needed. I think we had good office space. You know, I couldn't complain about that. Um, I think during that time period, they were really looking at how could you bring more African American students into the institution and how could we take care of them within the institution. During that time period, I think that was real.
Mhm.
Um, I've done some consulting work with the university since, and I could see that things were beginning to be managed differently.
Mhm.
I didn't see the real commitment to African American students when I was doing that consulting work with them. Yeah, no.
So you went from CU. You basically just you were stayed in the system, but you went south a little bit.
I went to once uh, there was a vice president there. Her name was Kay Howe. She saw something in me and she wanted to expand my horizons in the whole education field. So she asked if I would be interested in moving to another department. And that department was the admissions office, admissions and registration office. And I was moved into that area and as an assistant director, and I was given the opportunity to run one of the largest programs that they held in that office, to the
Mhm.
point that I had moved out of the admissions office and they had given me my own space in another building with a
Okay.
staff.
Mhm.
So again, I had a wonderful experience with that.
Mhm.
Someone who actually saw something in me, again, another mentor, and being able to be moved into that area, I was allowed, and when I say allow, meaning only because of how I grew the program
Mhm.
and the money I made off of that program, to be able to do certain types of things, such as move to another operation away from the admissions office, because we had grown too big just to be in the admissions office. But
Mhm.
we increased programs by, I would say, about 80% of
Wow.
what was being done by my white counterparts. So I made the program into something that was much, much larger than what and how I entered into that program.
What
So
was I'm
mm,
sorry, what was the key for you in you being able to make that kind of growth,
the, the
experience that kind of growth? What did you do that other folk weren't doing?
the key is what our parents taught us all along the way, and what our mentors have taught us all the way. You have to do it better, you have to do it bigger, and you have to do it um, and work harder than your counterparts to do that. With those programs, sometimes we would be late at night getting those programs ready. Late at night with editing, you name it. We had to make it perfect every time. I remember that I left and I got invited out of the country for a program, and my student staff that I had left in place, um, they were in charge of finalizing the program for these advanced placement teachers,
Mhm.
and one of the guys was the editor of the newspaper, but somehow um, the program had issues, especially from a first a grammar perspective. And
Mhm.
once I got back, I got it because not everybody had laid eyes on it, and
Oh.
we had to go back and correct it and everything and get it reprinted again. That type of stuff, because I wasn't there, it didn't go through all the right eyes, you
Okay.
know. And I have to be honest, I had the editor of the journalism department that was working on this particular project. So I thought it was a goal since
Yeah.
he produces the student newspaper every day. But that was a lesson learned. You got to make sure all your I's are dotted along the way. So yeah, there were problems with that, but that was a little problem because of how enormous the programs were and how successful we were in doing those programs, which helped me become the director of admissions and records at the University of Colorado at Denver campus,
Okay.
where I did the same type of work where we increased enrollment, did all
Mhm.
of those types of things. But I was doing a lot of work with the community college, which was on the same campus.
Mhm.
And they noticed me and invited me over to be their director of admissions, registration, and records. And 2 months after I was there, I was vice president of student services at the community college of Denver.
It sounds like what you talk about, and one of those, like, so it's almost the unsaid thing is that it's about the relationships you have. Because
Yeah,
I've talked to people like Bill Pitts, and I talked
yeah,
to Dan about the same thing.
yeah.
When they say, it's not just about the staff, it's also about the relationship you have with finance, with this
Right,
group, with the
right,
deans, with the faculty, with
right.
all those other different services. I mean, how do you manage to mesh all of those types of relationships together? For you, what's the ingredient that you need to make those kind of things happen?
The ingredients is you can't look at people as the other administrator, other faculty. You have to become friends with these people and have a relationship already developed,
Hmm.
with them, and where they buy into what you're doing. It's also about sharing what you're doing and making them a very, very integral part of what you're doing. For example, at the Community College of Denver, the president and I, along with the rest of the team, we were able to get everybody on the same page of what we wanted to do and where we wanted to go. And that page was success
Hmm.
and allowing people to do things that were necessary for different groups of students to be successful there. By the time we left, we actually closed the gap of performance by age, ethnicity, gender, and disability. Now, the thing about it is, we had the total college on the same page working for the same issue. And that's one of the problems that we have today in colleges and universities. The reason you're not seeing the success rate as good as it should be is because people are doing their own thing in these colleges. But we have to get them on the same place. I mean, if everybody is dealing with excellence, what are your values of excellence? For
Hmm.
I'd say academic affairs and for student services, what are the things you live by in those areas? And a lot of this information we gather from students. I think you guys were very instrumental in my growth because you told me exactly what you wanted and exactly what how things should be, and I had to listen to you. And I've used that all along the way throughout my career. What are students saying? Are we listening to the students? And if you're listening to the students and you're getting what the students are saying to the faculty, to the staff, to everyone at the institution, and you're creating these values of excellence. You're creating these opportunities for people to do what they've been trained in. You find yourself increasing your retention and wanting people to come to your institution. By the time we left, we were the college that students of color we were the college for the city of Denver where students were coming to an
Hmm.
institution. They were coming to the community college of Denver because the word spreads. I mean, you can
Yeah.
create all of the publications you want
Hmm.
and all of the advertisement you want, but your biggest advertisement are students. They tell the story, if it's a good one or if it's a bad one.
Hmm. Now, after Colorado, you moved on to New York, I believe, and so yeah, and you really started to branch out and really
Right,
grow as a professional in ways maybe that even you didn't think about.
right.
Talk about some of that growth, both as a professional and as a person, and how those impacted you.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that. Um, the president had talked with me about he had said a little while ago. He said, "Get ready, Michael. This is going to blow up." get ready. And I readied myself right along with him. And his readiness was people are going to start calling you to share how we're doing this work. And true enough, people were calling. People, I was invited all over the country to talk about the work that we were doing. But at the same time, people were saying this work could only be done in Colorado. So the president decided he was moving to and accepting a job in Brooklyn, New York, which would be the third largest city in the United States if it were a city, but it's a borough. So he moved to New York, and at his going away party, his wife said, "You know, you're going with us." I said, no, we went on. And so finally, he said, he's going to tell you, you're going with us. Now, my white counterparts all thought they were going with
Mm.
him. But but in the final analysis, when it was announced, it was me that was going with him because he
Mm.
needed a certain type of work done at that
Yeah.
institution. It was a huge institution,
Mhm.
and it was a mostly Jewish institution,
Mhm.
and he needed some work done at that institution, and he needed somebody that can do it real quick. Um, and so again, he's one of my major mentors. He's white, but
Mhm.
he's one of my major mentors in this whole process and have taught me everything that I know about community colleges. And we were there for 4 years to show that any college could do this type of work that we were talking about.
Mhm.
And that college has won awards. While there were books written about the Community College of Denver, awards have been given to this college called Kingsborough Community College,
Mm.
and but did some wonderful work there, closed a lot of gaps there, and then moved on to Rhode Island Community Colleges, where I was over all of student services for all of our campuses there,
Mhm.
and and then finally California saw me and invited me to become their vice president of student services at Sacramento City College, and I was there and became the president of that college too. But at the same time, I did some work at City College of San Francisco when they were losing their accreditation, and was able to get their accreditation back up and on track. And went back to Sacramento College after that. It wasn't Sacramento City College of San Francisco; it just wasn't a place that I thought I needed to be in. And I went back and I became president of the college for a couple of years.
So
Yeah,
let me stop. What does it take to really get, and let's talk about the middle states and stuff like that,
yeah,
correct? Is that, am I
yeah,
off?
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
What does
no,
it
no, no.
take to, it's not middle states at that point.
No, it's middle states is that's you. That's out your way.
Okay.
There are different accreditation associations for different parts of the United States.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
But they all have the same basic
Hmm.
criteria and the same objectives. And all colleges have to meet those goals and those objectives. But
Hmm.
if you decide, as City College of San Francisco did, because they're so large, they were the largest single college in the United States with over 100,000 students.
Wow.
When you're that large, you think you can do what you want.
Hmm.
And so finally, several years ago, it caught up with them, and the accreditation said, no, no more. You're going to have to follow the processes and the accommodations. And then that's when we were brought in to get them back on track. And but all colleges, that's one of the things I'm doing now. I'm doing consulting work for
Hmm.
Chabot College in Hayward, California,
Hmm.
and I'm their consultant, where I'm here 5 days a week and I go home on the weekends. But I'm here 5 days a week helping them get on track. And I'm actually uh, they've given me a temporary position of a vice president to make sure people listen to me.
You
So
know, it's funny. It's funny
uh,
because you and I have talked
yeah,
offline, quite a bit. And one thing I noticed as we're talking is there's a theme running through
uh,
all of these positions.
right,
And it's I don't want to call it the elephant in the room, but maybe it's the brother in the room.
uh-huh,
Um, How did you approach sometimes being the first or the only or the
Right,
one they didn't expect? How do you approach that in each of those positions? Because you didn't go to Grambling
right,
and Morgan and
right,
Hampton. You went
right.
to those other schools and
Right.
you found success in exponential ways. How does that, what's the mindset that it takes to navigate and then succeed in that environment?
Well, it's always listening and learning from your colleagues and things of that nature. So that was a key factor, and the other key factor was, you know, as I told somebody, you may be the smartest. How did I say it? Um, you may be the smartest in the room, but you can't always let everybody know, and
Mm,
especially being an African American, you cannot always let people know that you may be the smarter one or you may know the answer to everything in the room. So I've learned how to use my words. And we learned that even in college. We wouldn't raise our hands first and be the first one speaking because we wanted to make sure we were saying it right. We wanted to
mhm,
make sure we were on the right track. And after a while, we would raise our hand if it hadn't passed us already. But you do the same thing in these positions. I had the luxury one time of having a vice president of academic affairs, and she and I were very, very good friends. And she noticed that I would say things in the meetings, and it would be glossed over. But then again, 2 minutes later, somebody would say the same thing, and it
mm,
happens to all of us. It happens to many of us
mm,
in these positions where you're the only one sitting at the table. And she caught on. So she did something that was really interesting. She would repeat whatever the last person said that I had said. She would repeat it, and then she would end it by saying, "So you're saying exactly what Michael just said."
Ah.
Yeah. And she would do it over and over and over again. Another thing that she did, she made a sign for me and laminated it, and it said, "I'm next," because I would raise my hand and they would overlook me. So
Mm,
she had made a sign, so I would just put up the sign. I would just put up the sign, and I would put up the sign, and it would say, "I'm next," and they would say, "Oh, we're going to get to you. We see that your hand was up. We're going to get to you." And I would just
mm,
keep the sign up till finally they had to get to me because I have a way of looking at the big picture
mhm,
and explaining the big picture versus the small piece that sometimes people are looking at. Because sometimes you need to look at the big picture versus that small piece you're trying to take care of. I just did it just the other day where we were looking at this really nice building that we have, and they wanted to renovate it. And it's a student services building, huge student
mm,
services building. And they
mhm,
wanted to, take people out and put people in. And I'm going, I said, nah. Yeah, I said, this isn't renovation. This is reimagining this whole building, reimagining all of the services that are offered in this building. I said, so there's nothing about renovating because you can't just take people out and drop people in without a plan. You need a
mm.
plan. you know
Well,
so so that has been a always a situation, and repeating yourself sometimes, saying, well, maybe I wasn't clear.
mhm,
Let me try to be a little clearer in what I'm saying. So there's lots of techniques you can use in getting your point across, and a lot of it too is that people really have to document, and what's happening at this institution is that you have to show your worth. Nobody
mhm,
knows what you're doing. So what are we going to do to make sure people know what it is that you're doing? Well, we're going to reproduce quarterly reports, or we're
mhm,
going to do white papers,
mhm.
and make sure people are understanding the work that's being done in this operation. You know?
Now, we that good something else you and I have talked about offline is
Hmm.
looking at the education system as it stands today. In fact,
Right.
that's probably why
Wait.
your services are so much needed today.
Yes.
Um, where are we? Because where we are now is not where we were 10, 20, 30,
Right.
40, even 50 years ago.
Right.
What changed and how do you go about fixing that?
Well, at this point in our time, people are talking about taking away things.
Yeah.
And this isn't new. Um, Taking away things, specifically when you start to look at programs of color or some of our minority programs, we've always dipped into that pot of money first to find money,
Hmm.
okay, to take things away. So where we're going, what we're going through in the United States at this point with the people that are in Washington, it's about taking away things. Mainly because I do think there are a lot of people, even within our educational systems, that are looking at a third world image where you have an uneducated population. I mean, for example, you see people, a lot of people that voted for Trump, for example, were really uneducated people.
Hmm.
Okay. And when you have an uneducated populace, like in most third world countries, you can do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
You can just do what you want. So right now it's being said equity and all of those things, shouldn't be important. Programs specifically for people of color shouldn't be important because we should be doing things for all students. Well, the thing about all students, our whole education systems were built around white students.
Right.
Okay, it wasn't built around us and all of the contributions that we've made to this United States of America. It was built around what they've done, and a lot of our curriculums have to be rewritten to include us in this whole process. But that's not something people want to do. So the way to get around it is by throw everything out that's dealing with equity and inclusion and diversity, throw it out because now we don't have to rewrite anything at all. And the other side of it is, which has been the story all along, even when you guys were in college, why do you have an EOPS program for them?
Hmm.
Why do you have this for them? Well, mainly because there's a whole history that's a whole history lesson on
Hmm.
why
Yeah.
we need these things for people of color. But I do think that there are institutions that are still interested in um, finding ways to do the same work that they've always done. I
Hmm.
just looked at the financial group. Is that Chase Morgan?
A
Um,
mortgage case.
yeah, Morgan Chase. I think
Yeah.
one of the top financial institutions. They decided that they were taking equity out of their diversity, inclusion, and equity,
Hmm.
and just putting in just one other word, but keeping the same focus on what they're doing. Um, and I think I have it here. Maybe not, but they're just taking one word out, but they're including everything else because they say it's important. Yeah, no. So, so you still have people that are thinking that it's a good thing and that we should
Hmm.
continue doing it, but just to go along with what's going on in out there, we're just going to change one word, but continue doing all the work that we're doing. So there's tons of institutions out there doing that, but there's other institutions that are being ran by people who follow what people in Washington D.C.
Hmm.
Thinking and that they have to do. Get rid of the diversity person. Get rid of all the things
Right.
that say yada yada yada. And those are institutions that don't believe in the whole inclusion piece.
It's funny what got me really kind of refocused on this because this particular subject is a piece I read, God, about 6, 7 years ago out of UCLA. It
Mm-hmm.
talked about how colleges recruit,
Mm-hmm.
and to put it mildly, bluntly, and indirectly, they recruit richer, whiter, and dumber.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even about excellence, is what they're trying to say here, because well, let's say black women are the most highly educated group in this whole country.
But they
You
don't want
know,
to. They don't want to admit that.
yeah. So and when we were the OP, we had a higher graduation rate than the general population. So
Right.
clearly, success was not the problem.
Right.
Um, And so I wonder, even as organizations change their names, if
Hmm.
you're dealing with folks outside who are bent on tearing down those institutions anyway, how do
Right.
you navigate that when they start trying to break down numbers? Say, oh, you got too many of those here. You're breaking that 4% rule. You know,
Well,
you know what I'm
the
saying?
first,
They're
yeah. Well, the first thing is people need to be, one of the things that we don't do really well is get that information out about who we are. I mean,
Mhm,
for example, um, someone would look at me having been president, vice chancellor,
mhm,
my consulting company that's of where I'm in right now. They would say that's a DEI hire,
right.
you know, and me being in this seat and me having been president had nothing to do with DEI. It had to do with my background, my what I've been able to accomplish as an administrator, all of those different types of things.
Mhm.
But from a Washington perspective, they want you to think it's a DEI hole, and people believe that.
Yeah.
People believe that. I mean, even when you guys were in school, they thought every black person there was on financial aid.
Yep.
Now granted, a lot of us were,
Mhm.
but not everybody was on
Right.
financial aid at that institution. And the other side of it is that you guys were brought into the institution and you had good GPAs. You had leadership qualities. You had a lot of things that they were looking for to be at that institution. You had it, but that's not what people wanted people to believe. Yeah, no, that's not what people want. The EOPS program was for people because you needed more to be at that institution. You didn't need more to be at the institution. You just needed to be engaged. You just
Yeah.
need to be connected. And then that success that you just talked about, having better success rates than the rest of the institution because you went through this particular program, you were
Mhm.
engaged. We find the same type of information when we do national searches out of this one that I'm on the board, Community College Survey of Student Engagement. We looked at
Mhm.
the Phi Theta Kappa, the highest honor society that you can be in. And we
Yep.
looked at the students, how they began together. And we saw the students that were in Phi Theta Kappa because people got engaged, they were connected, they were accountable to someone, had
Yep.
the 4.0. But these same students entered in at the same way, same GPA and everything else, didn't have it, so their GPAs were lower. Their
Hmm.
GPAs were lower, but these students were higher, you know, and going off to Berkeley, Harvard, Yale, or wherever.
It sounds like the HBCU model. When you look at
Yeah,
like the African American kids who have doctorates, a large percentage of them did their undergraduate work at HBCUs.
yeah,
And
yeah,
clearly, there's something they're doing at those campuses that I'll just say other campuses
yeah,
don't do. The
yeah,
same is true for schools like Vassar and Bryn Mawr. They're
yeah,
doing the same types of things for women who seem to be doing much better post when they get into the graduate
yeah,
level studies
yeah,
because they've had that 4 years of something very different.
yeah.
And what you're doing at the 2 year level, you're doing that something different.
Yeah, we're doing that engagement and that connection piece, and
Hmm.
we definitely see the students that are in these specific support groups are graduating at a higher rate than
Hmm.
other students. So if you're connected here in the community college, you're going to do good. Not all students need it, but if you get into a program, even with Phi Theta Kappa, you get into that program, you're going to be engaged. You're going to be accountable to someone. One of the reasons that you guys did well because we were always in your butts. You know, look, if you didn't do well last semester, this is what you got to do to get back in good status. Okay, this is what you have to do.
Hmm.
And how you doing this semester? What's up? Or let's go to lunch. Or we having a potluck for you. All those
Hmm.
different types of things. And listening to what you guys are saying so we could build our programs around what you think we need to be doing. Yeah, I know.
You know, looking at where you are now, you're a gentleman of a certain age. You've done
Right,
these things. You've
right,
accomplished many, many things. Where are you in life? I mean, you're that kid from St. Louis, but you're not that kid from St. Louis anymore.
right.
Or you know what I'm saying? How who? Who is Michael Poindexter now?
Well, right now, I have my own company and I work with colleges around the country on strategic planning and on a variety of different things, institutional transformation, and also DEI, too. Um, I, 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 I am a person that can't stay away.
Mm.
I can't stay away. I have to be doing something in the field all the time. And other times, I'm just traveling around the world. I just travel around the world. That makes me happy. So I'm doing those types of things. And at the same time, the other piece that has been a part of my life for the last couple of years, I've been taking care of a couple of friends and family members that have Alzheimer's. Yeah,
Oh,
no. So I do that a lot. I travel and I do this work.
you know,
That's who I am right now.
yeah, I'm thinking about this as I'm coming up on this, the question. Um, this man right now in that white sweater sitting in that office,
Right,
young man walks in, is 18-year-old Michael Poindexter.
right.
What is that gentleman I'm looking at? What is he saying to that young man?
Um, I will be saying, be the best that you can be. Dream big, huge. Whatever you're dreaming, you need to make it even bigger. And you need to go and find whoever you possibly can to be your mentor and to help you along the way and to become who you want to be. Um, I am saying to that person, um, everything isn't about money at first, you know. I say that because there have been situations I've made more money than I've ever made, and but at the same time, it wasn't good money, and that meant that I had to leave
Yeah.
because it wasn't good money. It didn't make me feel good, and I wasn't going to feel good. And so I had to leave that situation and then go back to something that was less. But the thing about it is, um, uh, knowing that being financially free is good, but do it the right way and have fun. Have fun in doing what you're doing. At one of the institutions I wasn't having any fun. I was making
Mhm.
big money, but I wasn't having any fun. So that wasn't for me. And my life is always about having fun and a nice glass of wine.
Hmm.
So that's what I would tell them. Yeah, go out and have fun. Be the best you can be. Dream big. Dream really, really big, and have a lot of fun doing it.
Thank you, Michael.
Hmm